So first, I would like to welcome Luca Manesini, Chair of the S&D Group, or President, I never know, President of the S&D Group in the Committee of the Region, because this event is really co-designed, co-organized between the S&D Group here in the European Parliament and the S&D Group in the Committee of the Region. I think it's very important because our debates will show that the LIFE program has roots in the territories, the cities, the regions. It's also a place-based approach of European public policies. And I would like also to thank the ENVI working group, Thiemo Volken, the coordinator, and the MEPs from the working group that are there. So Alessandra Moretti, Annalisa Corrado, Cesar Luena, Nicolas Casares will join in the program. They are all very proactive on these issues. So short introduction on my side, and then I will let the floor to Luca. So we are at a crucial moment because we are in the middle of the discussion on MFF. It seems that we could have some time, but not, in fact. Even if the final decisions are perhaps in a few months, it is really now that we have a key discussion within our political group, within the different committees, to decide what should be the design of the MFF and what should be the future of existing very important programs. So LIFE program, as you know, has been deleted by the Commission. It's always the same speech we have. It's fantastic not to have a program because you will be able to have more money in national, regional partnership plan or in Europe's competitiveness fund. And we fear that it would be a nightmare for some political priorities and some networks, including NGOs. So perhaps it would have been fun to have in this parliament environment or health considered by everybody as a key element of competitiveness. So we can put that at the core of competitiveness, but it's not exactly the vision of EPP. So we have to defend a specific approach of environment issue and how to support environment programs. Then we all know that there is a climate target in MFF, but we also all know that it's much more difficult to take into account biodiversity issues and targets. And everybody's talking about climate change, and it's crucial. But we have a few voices really talking about the collapse of biodiversity. So we really need a dedicated program, a dedicated LIFE program with a strong budget and a regulation if we want to have strong public policies. And it's exactly why we are here all together. So when we are dealing with LIFE, we are dealing with nature and biodiversity. We are dealing with circular economy, with climate change mitigation and adaptation, also with clean energy transition. And across that priorities, we are dealing with nature-based solutions, which are really very important to build a different way how to live in on our planet and how to organize our life. Once again, LIFE program is a place-based approach program, a bottom-up program in a large parts of its concrete implementation. So we have to be able to support all the experimentation, efforts, new ideas coming from local communities, coming from the cities and the regions. Yes, we can do a lot for all these priorities in cohesion policy, but we are not sure to protect totally cohesion policy. We are working on that all together. But we also need this specific program to support specific action and specific experimentation. And all the cities and regions in Europe have to prepare to implement nature restoration law, even if it's up to the member states to present their national plans. We all know that cities and regions will have to be really committed, and we need European policies also to support these efforts. My last words will be for NGOs, because LIFE is also a program who support strongly NGOs. We all know what is the fight of EPP and far right against civil society and against NGOs and against green NGOs in this parliament, but also within the Commission. You know that for health NGOs, the Commission deleted the operational grants. It's not yet the case for the green NGOs, but they are also under pressure. And we have to keep a specific dedicated program able to support green NGOs as key actors of the public debate, not only because of their own competencies and capacity to deal with concrete questions, but also to support their capacity to be the voice of citizens and to be part of the vibrant democracy and to strengthen pluralism at European level. So I think it's also a third point we have to get in mind and to be very supportive when we are dealing with this necessity to have, again, a dedicated life program. Thanks for your attention, and I give the floor to my friend Luca.
Thank you very much, Christophe, and thank you to everyone here today, colleagues from Committee of the Regions, colleagues from European Parliament, representatives of civil society, cooperatives, local associations, people who actually do the work on the ground. And we are here for a simple reason, to say clearly together that the LIFE program must survive the next MFF as a standalone program. And we are here to mark this position clearly and to begin with all of you a platform that cannot be ignored. Let me be direct about the context. MFF negotiations are always complicated. There is never enough money, everyone is competing, and every line in the budget is a political battle. That is nothing new, but this time the architecture itself has changed. The Commission's proposal put regions in competition with each other. They put political priorities in competition with each other inside the same fund. You have cohesion, you have climate, you have competitiveness, defense, all together in a single pot. All priorities fighting for the same envelope. This is clearly the way in which the Commission is delegating cuts and responsibilities to member states. And when every region and every ministry is fighting for everything, some things disappear quietly. Not because someone decided to kill them, but because they got lost in the noise. That is the risk for the LIFE program. The Commission has proposed to mainstream climate and environmental objectives across other funds. 35% here, a contribution there, it sounds reasonable on paper. But we know what this mainstream means in practice. It means cutting funds that go to climate, tech, innovation, or decarbonization of the military or agriculture as a climate investment. How to preserve and defend financial space for climate mitigation and adaptation, water management? This is not something we can overlook. It means that when things get tight, and they always get tight, the environment is cut first. We cannot accept that. Because LIFE is a program that worked. Since 1992, has funded over 6,500 projects. It brought back the Iberian lynx. It restored wetlands. It helped the cities adapt to climate change. It gave local authorities, municipalities, provinces, regions a concrete tool to act, not to plan, to act. In Tuscany, in my region, we have seen this with our own eyes. LIFE project restored the ecosystem in the Tuscan archipelago. They improve water management in Val di Cornia. They develop sustainable forestry models that are now used as references across Europe. These are not abstract results. These are real places, real habitats, real communities that are better off because life existed. If it works, why discontinue it? That is a question the EPP-led majority in this parliament will need to answer. We are seeing more and more a pattern of backtracking on climate commitment, on biodiversity targets, on EU responsibility for territorial cohesion. We see it in the weakening of environmental legislation. We see it in the way regions and local authorities are being sidelined in the new budget architecture. We are not here to be pessimistic. We are here because we believe we can change the outcome. But to do that, we need to be united. The S&D Group, the PS Group and the Committee of the Regions, we are together on these maps, local elected representative, and the organization, cooperatives, and civil society actors in this room. You are part of this too. Because what we are defending is not a line of a budget. We are defending the idea that you invest in protecting its people, their air, water, land, their communities. Climate adaptation is a protection. Biodiversity is quality of life. A clean river is not a luxury, it is a well-being. This is what we stand for, improving the lives of our people. And the LIFE program, the name itself says it's about exactly that. Let's keep it alive. Thank you.
Now we will leave the floor for the first panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to say hello also to my colleagues that are here, Alessandra Moretti, Thomas Bajada. Okay, sì. Ciao. Thank you very much to join us. And thank you all for being here. Let me start by thanking Christophe Querejot and Stefano Menesini for setting the scene so clearly and for their strong and continued commitment to safeguarding the LIFE program. Their remarks remind us that it is not just a technical discussion on funding instruments. It's a political choice about the kind of Europe we want to build. Now, let me turn to the focus of this panel, the role of LIFE in climate mitigation and adaptation, and in particular in climate governance and information. We make LIFE unique, and what we should keep firmly in mind in the current MFF debate is not only what it funds, but how it works. LIFE operates exactly where the transition becomes real, on the ground, in our territories, with local authorities, communities, NGOs, and businesses working together. And this is particularly crucial when we talk about climate action, because mitigation and adaptation are not abstract policy goals, they are concrete transformations. how we manage land, how we produce energy, how we protect ecosystems, how we prepare our cities and regions for increasingly frequent extreme events. This is also why LIFE's support to climate governance and information is so important. It strengthens capacity, builds partnerships, and ensures that knowledge translates into action at the level where implementation actually happens. And today's speaker will give us a very concrete sense of this. We could spend hours describing the wide range of areas covered by LIFE and naming hundreds of successful projects. Let's start. No, it's a joke. But I will limit myself to mention two fields that are particularly relevant today because they reflect sectors under growing pressure and because they show how LIFE can support the transition and in particular climate mitigation and adaptation in concrete and fair ways. I would start with agricultural resilience and climate adaptation. And energy decarbonization. This is essential not only because of the climate crisis, but also because of the growing insecurity of fossil fuel supplies and their rising costs, a trend worsened by every new geopolitical tension, including the current situation in the Gulf. Phasing out fossil fuels is therefore both a climate and a strategic necessity. But this transition must be done in a way that is sustainable and socially accepted. Here again, LIFE plays a key role. We will hear in this panel about citizen-driven initiatives, and I would also mention projects including which bring together energy operators and NGOs to ensure that grid development and electrification go hand in hand with biodiversity protection, like safe lines for birds. These are not isolated examples. They show the kind of systemic cooperative approaches that LIFE enables. And this brings me to a final point. In recent months, also in reaction to the very disappointing proposal from the European Commission, we have witnessed a growing mobilization in support of LIFE from local authorities across Europe, beyond political differences, from stakeholders, and now also from citizens, with an open call on change.org that I invite you to support. This mobilization has clearly resonated within the European Parliament. Starting from the ENVI opinion on the MFF, we are seeing a broad and cross-party convergence on the need to safeguard LIFE as a standalone program, and we are committed to ensuring that this is fully reflected in the Parliament's negotiation position. Because there is a growing awareness that if we weaken LIFE, we weaken our capacity to implement the transition where it matters most, in our regions, in our cities, in our communities. I'm very pleased now to introduce our speakers who will help us explore this dimension in more depth. We have with us Arianna Censi, PES ENVE coordinator at the Committee of Regions and Councillor of Mobility of the City of Milan. Milano, yes, Milano, I think Milano, yes. Bringing the perspective of cities and local governance. Adriana Rodriguez Rivera, Climate and Public Finance Analyst at Climate Strategy, who will help us to connect climate ambition with financing frameworks. Chris Rettos, Senior Policy Advisor at Rescope EU, representing the role of energy communities and citizen-driven initiatives. Thank you all for being here. And with that, I give you the floor, starting with Arianna. Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to thank you, Annalisa, and to all of you. So I speak English, me too, and until we have the translation. but they told us we haven't translation, so we speak English. And first of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to engage.
Come preferisci, dice sì, sì, puoi parlare in italiano.
Ok, parlo in italiano, va bene.
Okay, I will speak in Italian. Yes, you do have interpretation from Italian. Well, I was thinking that we were going to have a very short meeting if I was going to be speaking English, but Italian obviously takes more words, so I'll speak for longer. So I'd like to very much thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today. I think this is a very busy period for all of you here at the European Parliament, and we've all received plenty of letters, plenty of emails, plenty of encouragement. And this really does show how important this programme is and what is actually going on behind the scenes when it comes to European policy on the environment and climate. And I'd like to pick up where those that introduced this meeting left off, because life is a political choice. It's not just a technical instrument. No, it talks about how we want to bring about the green transition over the next few years. Why has the LIFE programme worked well? Well, it is an all-encompassing programme. It brings together European institutions, local and regional authorities, associations, citizens. It has very complex strategic objectives, but you then see these distilled into tangible actions that people notice the effects of on the ground. And we can see this also in our experiences at the local level. If you look at the Lombardy region, a very large region in Italy, I've got three examples, three very clear examples. There's one programme which brought climate adaptation into the strategic planning of an entire metropolitan area. This is what happened in Milan, 134 municipalities, more than 3 million inhabitants. And we've seen these ideas crystallised on the ground in a way that is reproducible and has been recognised at European level. LIFE EU Urban Proof came up with operational instruments to bring climate risk analysis into local decisions. Now, there is, of course, a risk of climate change here, and how we can look at this when we're dealing with urban planning. Now we can have a more strategic view of this, and bringing different strands together, even amongst various municipalities. And LIFE Manage 2020 has shown how the governance of biodiversity can also become a very tangible issue. A coordinated way of bringing people together to actually implement European policy. And this is a discussion which we have entered into several times, and the issue of LIFE comes back time and time again. We had a meeting this morning about the Green Deal going local. Again, LIFE was mentioned there. If you'll allow, it's become almost iconic. It's become like Erasmus. It has a European identity for citizens, for organisations, for industry, for local administrations. And the projects that I talked about before, they're not exceptions. No, they are the proof that without LIFE, lots of programmes just would not have happened. Not because there's a lack of ideas, but because there's a lack of an instrument that can be harnessed. If you look at how this programme has developed over the years, you can see that it has borne fruit. And therefore, I think we all need to defend LIFE. We need to defend it in a formal way. And we need to clearly say that what is going on at present can actually be very destructive. Putting LIFE in amongst broader strategies without a stand-alone budget line and without an autonomous legal basis, essentially that would be a waste of what we've built up over the last 30 years. Let me be very clear and frank here. We can't just ask for LIFE to continue. No, we need a strong legal basis. We need a stand-alone budget heading. Without this, LIFE will no longer exist as a recognisable, accessible programme that can actually have an impact on the ground. If you look at what the European Parliament is saying here, and thank you very much for all the work you're doing, I thank you on behalf of all local administrations, it's very significant what you're doing. The work you have done in the budget and NV committees, you've been working together and you're moving in the right direction. But as I see it, this is not sufficient, because here we're not talking about a budget heading. No, we are deciding whether Europe wants to continue to have an instrument which can provide support to LRAs, organisations and citizens in a real green transition. And this transition hasn't come to an end. We have made significant steps forward, of course, but we have not yet completed our journey. The effects of climate change are becoming more and more evident. The loss of biodiversity continues, and at the same time, there are new challenges emerging. But I get messages from lots of people back in Milan, because we have a water emergency. Every time it starts to rain heavily, even though we have been able to use European financing to improve our infrastructure, in spite of all of this, there is still a risk that our city ends up underwater. And I think that's a reality for plenty of Italian cities. So this transition, not only is it not finished, but it may even become more painful in the future, especially if you look at the green transition, innovation and technology. Today, we are dealing with issues which didn't really exist a few years ago. Let's think about data centres, for instance. Where are we going to locate them? What criteria are used to choose the location? What are the energy and environmental impacts? How is this integrated into urban systems? These are not separate from environmental policy. No, it's part and parcel of environmental policy, and will be over the next few years. And that's why we need a more ambitious approach, which brings together climate, innovation, planning, and on-the-ground justice. And we need an instrument such as LIFE, which works in an integrated way, bottom up, and it comes up with solutions which can be replicated elsewhere. But this is not an easy battle that we're entering into. Maybe some of you think that we've already lost. I don't think we have. I think we need to continue in a very determined fashion to stand up for what we believe in. And we, as the Committee of the Regions, I think we have the possibility to strengthen the presence of local administrators who, over the last few years, have really built up lots of capacity, even in small municipalities, because we have big cities in Europe, but we also have small municipalities, and they're all involved in this process. Organisations are also asking us to do more, because they really believe in LIFE. Local authorities are also asking us to defend LIFE, because they require access to what LIFE provides. In the next MFF, we need to make a strong political choice, strengthening LIFE rather than diluting it. We need to build, not rip down, because we want to make sure that Europe can really deal with the climate and environmental challenges that it is facing. We need everybody to be around the table, and therefore we cannot allow ourselves to be weakened, especially when you're dealing with instruments that have shown that they are efficient. Thank you.
Esatto, questo.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that is a point of crucial importance. We're dealing here with a multifarious crisis here, and the fact that we need to come up with new solutions all the time, there is a risk of us getting rid of something that has already ensured that we could move in the right direction, and has really proven its worth. I think that's very important what you said there, because very often there are laws or instruments and lots of financial resources, but there's no real quantification of the benefits that programs have produced. But we do have that for LIFE. It's always been beneficial, and everybody can see the fruit that it has borne. So thank you very much for the words that you have shared with us. Thank you very much for continuing to stress this point. I'd now like to give the floor to Adriana Rodriguez Rivera. As I said before, she is the Climate and Public Finance Analyst at Climate Strategy. Go ahead.
Gracias. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation to participate in this event. And I will speak in English, but I come from Spain, so I could half understand the speakers, what they were saying. First of all, for those who don't know us, at Climate Strategy, we have more than 15 years of experience in sustainable finance. And for the past 3 years, we've been leading work on the next MFF. We've published 2 reports presented in this parliament, actually. And especially what we've been working on is an efficiency perspective, how to improve the design of financial instruments in the next MFF so that we can crowd in more private investments. If we could go to the next slide. I don't know how to pass them, but
Yes.
okay, great. And why is this key? Because we're still missing half of the investments we need for the clean transition, and a big part of that has to come from the private sector. So that's why we have been working on how to improve financial instrument design, especially focused on the European Competitiveness Fund. Now, this event is about LIFE, because LIFE actually is very important for, especially for the parts that need grants and support from direct subsidies for innovative projects, for technical assistance, and also for those investments that don't have clear returns from the market, and that includes environment and biodiversity. And therefore, nevertheless, there are still some very interesting projects in LIFE that use financial instruments, and I will point at one case study that we've been looking at. So LIFE is important because it brings this added a capacity for member states that are facing constrained fiscal space in the current circumstances. And for instance, when we're discussing this with the Spanish ministry, they told us that LIFE is essential for them to be able to implement climate and environmental policies at the local level. LIFE is also important because a lot of the investments we're missing in the transition are in the demand side, and there are small-scale investments that need to be done at the local level, and there's millions of them. What do I mean by this? Investments in solar panels, solar rooftop, investments in electric vehicles, investments in buildings renovations, and all of these are spread around in these key sectors of the demand side, transport, buildings, agriculture, that are missing most of the investments for the clean transition. So there's no doubt that having a self-standing ring-fence LIFE is key to make sure we have predictability of this funding that is already happening at the local level, and to earmark this budget for these specific small-scale investments. This is a concern that is everywhere in the next MFF, though, because the proposal provides indicative budgets for the clean transition windows of Horizon Europe, of the Competitiveness Fund, and this is something we want to bind more and make them, let's say, binding and minimum budgets, so that we can prevent the lack of democratic oversight, the lack of predictability, and the lack of stability in funding. If we go to the next slide, so as I was saying, we are looking at this efficiency in public financial instruments, and grants are a key part of LIFE. Also, technical assistance requires grants, and LIFE has a lot of projects on technical assistance. What I'm going to focus now is on one project called the Private Finance for Energy Efficiency. It's a program in LIFE, and it's developed quite interesting results, and there is an opportunity in the next MFF to create increased synergies with existing funds like InvestEU to reach a greater scale. So I think there are some risks, but there are also some opportunities in the next MFF that we can tap on. So if we go to the next slide, this initiative that I mentioned, the Private Finance for Energy Efficiency, is actually a financial instrument jointly managed by the EIB and DG Klima, which has 250 million committed by LIFE, and it has managed to mobilize 691 million investments, so a 3.3 times leverage, to invest in energy efficiency projects that are small scale, particularly in the energy efficiency of SMEs. And it actually has supported 15 financial intermediaries around, I think, around 10 member states, which you can see there, including, Hungary, Cyprus, Czechia, Spain, France. So there's quite a lot of them, and you can see that geographical balance is quite good. And these kind of projects that bring in additional private capital to clean transition investments are really what we are looking for in terms of additionality of the EU budget, and what we need to preserve. And what we cannot see now is a cut in these ongoing projects. We need to continue the current structures that are working well, and we see this is a successful case. Also, it's successful because it brings together different types of stakeholders at the more local level. It develops innovative structures, and therefore having a standalone LIFE can really make sure that these kind of structures are continued. There is, as I said, still an opportunity, of course, to bring these projects to scale and to create more synergies with EU financial instruments. I think that's why there's an interesting conversation to be had on how the Competitiveness Fund InvestEU tool can support, let's say, bringing these small-scale projects into scale and providing systemic transformation. InvestEU has not been traditionally good at providing these small-scale investments, so that's why these synergies have to be created, keeping in mind that sometimes the action needs to happen at the local level very much. If we go to the next slide, this is what I was trying to say before. Basically, if we create synergies with LIFE, we could be able to achieve a multiplier impact that InvestEU can bring and really bring everything to scale. In the next slide, something that I did want to bring up, and this is where a lot of our work is focusing on, is the Competitiveness Fund, right? Because right now the discussions are being had on whether LIFE should be part of it or not. We definitely support what many of the speakers will say here, to have a standalone program, because there are different risks that could happen if LIFE is kept in the Competitiveness Fund. First of all, because we think that the Competitiveness Fund, the way it's defined and its scope, is too narrow right now. It's very much focused on the supply side, and there's not enough focus on the demand side, where we find the most of the investment gap is right now, as I said previously. And therefore, it's unclear how instruments like the private finance for energy efficiency or other programs for biodiversity and environment will be supported if the definition of competitiveness in the Competitiveness Fund is too narrow. And that's why we're working with different institutes, NGOs, also corporates, on defining competitiveness that includes resilience, energy security, well-being, sustainability, etc., in this definition. And this also includes investing in the demand side, in decarbonization, because it also creates... sorry. Okay, yeah, sorry. It creates the need, investing in the demand side also helps developing these lead markets for clean technologies that the European Competitiveness Fund wants to support. So what we can do to support an alignment between the Competitiveness Fund and LIFE priorities, making sure that definition of LIFE is granular and includes the whole spectrum of the investment and of priorities in the environment and climate, and ensuring that this bottom-up approach is also kept in LIFE and it's not just top-down, because it's a very important characteristic of LIFE. And then finally, the last point I wanted to make, if you go to the next slide, is on the governance of all of this and how we can ensure that if we get the right governance of the Competitiveness Fund, we can hopefully ensure that there's strategic prioritization also in LIFE. I mean, there are some projects called strategic projects in the LIFE program that could be improved in terms of how they address high climate and environment priorities in member states. And we have developed several proposals that I'm not going to explain here on how we can have a higher level, top-down, coordinated industrial and climate policy, but also how we can bring in local stakeholder consultation from the bottom. So if you go to the final slide, it looks very complex, but basically what we're starting to do is providing specific bodies in the Competitiveness Fund the mandate to provide strategic prioritization based on evidence and expert input, and then having thematic stakeholder platforms. And we could imagine having one specific platform for LIFE, where LIFE regional and local stakeholders are consulted to develop multi-annual work programs for LIFE priorities. And this is something that right now is missing in the Competitiveness Fund proposal, but we're really pushing to make sure this consultation of stakeholders is enshrined well there. Finally, just to say, we also have the national regional plans, and we also need to create synergies there. So this is something that needs to be better reinforced in the governance in the next MFF. And that will be everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Also for QR code, it's very useful to use. Chris Vrettos, Senior Policy Advisor at ResCop EU. Thank you very much.
Should I speak in Greek? Since we're bringing a bit of variety. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Indeed, I think we are faced with the Iran war. I think it's an unprecedented crisis, according to the International Energy Agency. I don't think it's yet kind of settled in, the price increases and the inflation and the cost of living crisis that we're about to experience. So I think this opens a very important opportunity to reframe the phase out of fossil fuels as a kind of like matter of urgent European and national security, same way we did after Ukraine. So on the one hand, you have this new, very important imperative, and on the other hand, you have a growing reactionary movement against renewables. I think in Italy, there's a moratorium in whole of Sardinia against renewables. In my native Greece, there is, conspiracies that forests are being burned to put wind turbines. I know that even in traditionally allied countries of renewables, there is this growing backlash. So how do we bring this all together? As you said, MEP Corrado, we need to do the transition from fossil fuels to renewables in a way that is inclusive and takes people by the hand. And this is what the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program is doing. It's all about the yes in my backyard. And that's what we do. That's what we do as Rescue PU. We're trying to organize with municipalities, with small businesses, with citizens to create local cooperatives to produce energy, which is this bottom-up approach, which is the essence of the LIFE program. And if we go to the next slide, I'll just very briefly, there's just maybe an energizer, a show of hands. Have you heard of the concept of energy communities before? Maybe just, if you just raise your hands. I see all the MEPs have heard it, so it's an important first step. So it's really, as I said, local stakeholders organizing to create a local renewable energy project for self-sufficiency in renewable energy. So if we move to the next slide, really, I think the essence of energy communities is that they decommodify energy. As you can see from the graph on the right, this is right after the invasion of Ukraine that private electricity prices spiked. And this is a comparison of the invoices in Belgium of private electricity suppliers that you can see in the black line. And the green line, where you can see much cheaper electricity prices, is from EcoPower, which is a Belgian cooperative supplier. So this is really what the key difference is in looking at energy as a common good, not as a commodity. And if we go to the next slide, I'm just going to briefly walk you through some live projects that have really helped us impulse this movement. Through the LIFE program, we have managed to create the first energy communities in Croatia, in Cyprus, hopefully soon in Malta. We're really doing some great work in Italy on working with municipalities, to really just do local energy sharing projects. And super briefly, I'll just go through these projects. Like there's the LIFE Social Energy project, which is concretely showcasing how energy communities can tackle energy poverty. This is, for example, in Ireland, where cooperatives are doing one-stop shops for renovations. In Greece, there's cooperatives that basically offer free shares in solar parks to energy-poor households. In Italy, there's Nostra, the national cooperative supplier that provides social tariffs. And really, we see that over 70% of energy communities have social goals, but like tackling energy poverty, but usually it's this first public funding, such as through LIFE, that they need to unlock this type of work. So if we go to the next slide. Yes, so this is another really emblematic project of called Loop, Life Loop, Local Ownership of Power. It helped train over 1,000 civil servants, people working for local authorities, for municipalities, on how to work with energy communities. So really, we called it the Tinder of energy communities because we helped connect local authorities with citizen groups. And this is the project through which the first energy community in Cyprus and Croatia was created. And if we go to the next slide. Yes, and another emblematic project in Slovenia, Greece, and Spain. It's called Gender for Power. It's really about providing vulnerable women with all the tools and the support to renovate their houses, doing this through energy communities. So there's a peer-to-peer approach, and that, you know, many times it's very confusing for us to renovate our houses. We don't know where to start. But if you do it through an energy community, there's already that sense of trust. So it's not just someone selling you something. So, you know, it's much easier. It's really taking people by the hand. And if we can move on. And I think this is one of the last ones, Life Comet. Through this project, we have managed to create national coalitions of energy communities in almost every Central and Eastern European country, including Slovenia, Romania, Estonia, Poland, Slovakia, Bulgaria, where, again, I think this is particularly kind of the block of countries that seem to be quite keen to stay with coal and gas. And, you know, there's at the European Council level, there's quite a lot of resistance to renewables. So this is really where we're trying to focus and say, no, actually empower citizens, you know, empower municipalities, SMEs, create these local cooperatives and do the energy transition right. And if we move to the next slide. And yes, probably this is the most emblematic of all. It's a project that's still running. The Energy Communities Facility, it's a live project. It is providing lump sum grants to 143 energy communities all over Europe. And it's basically helping them develop their business plan. So it's really giving that first impulse that I was mentioning before to do their first steps. And we know that through this development capital, these energy communities can trigger over 145 million euros. So this is another thing that, you know, you put with life a small development capital, and then citizens come in and they crowd in the finance that, as Adriana said, is so desperately needed for the energy transition from the demand side. And if we go to the next slide. Yes, and this is kind of the closing statement that I want to say. I don't know how many of you are aware that the Citizens Energy Package was published by the Commission last week, which has a lot of ambition. It basically wants to increase community energy capacity to 90 gigawatt by 2030. So that's a 10-fold increase in just 4 years. But there's no legal enforcement mechanisms or new funding. And again, here, LIFE could provide the funding, and it could organize stakeholders bottom up to work with their national authorities to create energy communities and meet this very ambitious target. And this is the very last slide, just to say, maybe not for the MEPs, because this would be a conflict of interest, but civil society is organizing to really put pressure at the national level to make the MFF, including life, a topic of political conversation, to speak to the media. You know, many people don't even know what's about to change. They don't even know what's in the Commission proposal. So we're really trying to organize national stakeholders to make this a topic of political conversation at the national level, including on the national and regional partnership plans. So, yeah, I think that's...
Thank you very much indeed. I'm very happy of this kind of discussion because it shows how life works, no? Putting together several different experience and point of views in a very positive and pragmatic way. So, Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Firstly, I think we're preaching to the converted here a little bit, you know. So I think we here, the people who are here all want a standalone fund. As S&D, we are very much calling very clearly for a 7 billion euro fund, which is standalone. Whilst we shouldn't be, and we should be ambitious and not dishearten ourselves, it's still a very difficult fight ahead of us. So at the same time, we need to also prepare for other eventualities to see that we can create other alternatives that can help and that are workable. And in fact, tomorrow I will be presenting my opinion from an economic governance perspective of the NRPP. And my question, I think, is to Adriana. Is it Adriana? Okay, it's about financial instruments. I'm really interested in that respect because I'm seeing financial instruments and their facilitation as one of the tools that I can look at to ensure that we can grow investment alternatives. And you have mentioned that you have said it was one of the success stories and tools that help scale up. So I think my question mostly is from your experience, what kind of blending that we can propose and what are the alternatives that we need to look at as regards to the structure of financial instruments that you see that are workable. Of course, I'm looking from an NRPP aspect, but it can also be another target. Of course, LIFE program might be split into 1,000 pieces now, but this is definitely one of the tools that regions and local authorities can use to attract funding specifically for climate action. So I wanted to see also, because if you propose something that is good, I'll go and quickly write it before I submit it. So yes, that's very important, I think. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So what we've been pushing is the InvestEU member state compartment, which is now part of the competitiveness fund, and that's why we have focused so much now on the competitiveness fund. And this compartment is only used by, I think, around 7-8 member states so far. It's been used to provide to design financial instruments with contributions from Recovery and Resilience Facility. And it's proven successful in simplifying the design of financial instruments for national authorities, because it serves as an off-the-shelf financial instrument, plus the EU budget guarantee and the InvestEU multiplier effect of an average 14 times leverage, which is quite positive, and it brings quite a lot of, let's say, benefits for some member states that could benefit from this multiplier. And we've been pushing awareness about this compartment. And what we've been trying to do is create more synergies and cross-references with national regional partnership plans, because right now member states can contribute cohesion policy funds to this member state compartment. Now these are the NRPPs in the next MFF. And what we need to do is improve the incentives for member states to use this compartment, which should serve as a toolbox of financial instruments for them. And actually now what we're also proposing is the creation of a regional compartment, because a lot of the funds are managed by regions, but they cannot directly contribute to the InvestEU member state compartment. So why not create a regional compartment in this instrument? And with this, what we aim to do is to create efficiency in NRPPs, make sure we bring in the private sector investments that we really need in the transition, and simplify the life of local authorities that don't have the capacity, and this is shown by different reports from the Court of Auditors and the Commission, in designing financial instruments very easily. So let's do it at the EU level, and let's provide them with the budget guarantee of the EU to, let's say, lower the cost of financing for the local stakeholders.
What kind of investments do you see would be best to attract national and regional authorities? Sorry, but it's an important point.
So we want to see, for instance, a building renovation loan facility integrated into the InvestEU of the Competitiveness Fund. It's the biggest investment gap in the demand side. We want to target it to low-income homeowners. And what we can see is it could be started with around, let's say, 1 to 3 billion funding from the Competitiveness Fund as a pilot managed by the EIB, and then have member states contribute money from their NRPPs to finance the renovations of low-income homeowners.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I leave the table and give the floor to my colleague Cesar Luena for the next panel. Thank you very much indeed of you all. And so continue our discussion.
Okay, I think I can speak in Spanish, no? Yes, then I'm going to speak in Spanish. Bueno, vamos un poquito.
Okay, we're running a bit late. So I'd like to request the speakers that instead of 8 minutes, if they could speak for 5 to 6 minutes, and that way we'll have some time to have a couple of rounds of questions and answers. In this panel, we'd like to talk about the environmental impact of the LIFE program. Together with Natura 2000, it's one of the reference policies of the EU when it comes to the environment. We'd also like to hear from a mix of representatives from NGOs, civil society, and of course from the regions. These are the two sectors that converge when it comes to the correct implementation of the LIFE program. Just one example, and then I'll hand over to our speakers. So our first speaker is our dear colleague, Matteo Lepore, who is the mayor of Bologna. He's online. Congratulations on the results from Monday, and over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy for the referendum in Italy, but also happy to be with you and underline the importance of the thematic we are discussing on. And I'm starting from the awareness that in times of high ecological deficit, where we are hitting critical limits in biodiversity and soil fertility, fresh water, and so much more, the last thing the EU should do is cut programs that support action and can help prevent such catastrophes. Also, as a member of the Committee of the Region, I have to say that I propose and we approve an opinion on climate adaptation, and in my experience of deputy mayor before and now as a mayor, I have to say that the LIFE program is the only instrument entirely dedicated to environmental protection and nature and biodiversity conservation and climate action. And we need it like we need air. In Bologna, we have used it to support very important policies like greening the city and adapting to climate change. And I would like to share with you two examples. The LIFE Climate Project, Climate Value of Urban Trees, has enabled my municipality to develop its own urban climate green asset strategy. And this strategy aims to mitigate the effects of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving citizen well-being. In addition to the strategy, interventions were carried out in several of the city's key green spaces, like a park we have in my district, the Nicholas Green Park, or a park in the hills of Bologna, Villa Ghigi, and our central park called Parco dei Giardini, which serve as invaluable areas for the population, and particularly during the periods of intense heat. And I have to mention Bologna and the Pianura Padana area, one of the most polluted and warm area of Europe, and obviously of Italy. Thanks to another LIFE project, Blue Hub, the Bologna Local Urban Environmental Adaptation Plan for a Resilient City, Bologna has been the first city in Italy to adopt a local climate adaptation plan. Together with local stakeholders, my municipality tested concrete measures to make the city less vulnerable and to better prepare both the administration and its citizens to effectively face heat waves, droughts, and flooding, while simultaneously reducing the existing vulnerabilities of territory. Adaptation, in this case, as the pillar, and I think the experience of these two projects and programs permit us to be leader in Italy on this topic, and also to be leader of the climate mission we share with 100 cities in Europe and 9 cities in Italy. In this moment, thanks to Annalisa Boni, my deputy mayor, we are working with the Ministry of Environment in Italy and the experience of the urban dimension in cities is helping also the national level. So I think the topic of today is very important, and we have to push the topic in the European agenda. Thank you very much.
Grazie mille, caro Alcalde.
Thank you very much, dear Mayor. Now we have Robbie Beaver, who's the PES NAT coordinator and the Municipal Council of Bettemburg. Over to you, please.
Thank you, dear Cesar Luena, for hosting this event. I think it's an important event in the context of the LIFE program. Let me introduce myself. I'm president also of the largest NGO, nature protection NGO in Luxembourg. So I can give you some examples of my concrete living with the LIFE program. We had the regions, the Ardennes regions, covering a part of Belgium, a little part of Germany and Luxembourg. There we had several LIFE programs called LIFE Ardennes. It's a strong, I think, it's worth to underline that this LIFE program is a cross-border project that has a very positive impact as it is a restoration of forest and peatland ecosystems within Natura 2000 sites, covering more than 5,000 hectares of protected areas. So through targeted actions such as habitat restoration, removal of non-native tree species and re-wetting peatlands, it delivered concrete improvements in ecosystem quality and resilience. Its impact is both ecological and structural. The project restored hundreds of hectares of priority habitats and improved connectivity between fragmented ecosystems, benefiting key species as specific bird species and bat populations. By working closely with landowners, local authorities, and environmental organizations, it also strengthens governance and long-term management capacities in the regions. This makes it a strong example of how LIFE supports coordinated, large-scale biodiversity restoration across borders. But to my opinion, and I want to stress it, that the LIFE program is for me and for my organization a success story, as it is a clearly separate standalone program. Very positive results have been through all the years we are working with the LIFE program could be recognized. Restoration of habitats, giving us protection status on these rare habitats, but also we are seeing the recovery of species. I just want to mention rare butterflies coming back to these areas. For example, the black stork, who had been very rare in the Luxembourgish region, he recovered and is even conquering new habitats. The white stork has vanished from Luxembourg since 100 years. He came back in restored habitats and is now breeding once again in Luxembourg. And I had the rare chance to be in the Commission's high-level jury for the Natura 2000 award. And I think that was a very good experience for myself also, but also for underlining the importance of the LIFE program, where I saw a number of very, very good projects around the 27 member states, where biodiversity has dramatically improved through programs that have been co-financed or totally financed by the LIFE program. I think that this is a clear signal also to the locally based NGOs, not only member states or local and regional authorities, but also the engagement of NGOs is by the LIFE program quite strongly supported, not only financially, but also morally. So I think also, on the other hand, the LIFE program is a multiplier, because if you have a LIFE program that is run by local or regional authorities or run by member states, or, as I underlined it, by NGOs, you have a large possibility to free further money. If you have a live program, it's easy to convince your local authorities to contribute by their own budget to improve, to multiply the financial means that you could have. So I think that the live program is a strong incentive for having other funds than or beyond the live program. I would underline finally that all the live programs I followed, and in Luxembourg, as my association about the 32 last years, we had 15 live projects, whereas of these 15, 5 had been cross-border projects with an in total investment of 46 million. That's a huge amount for a small country like Luxembourg. And the results, they are tangible, they are measurable, and they are quite positive. So I would, as last word, say that we as humankind, we need intact ecosystems, we need protected habitats and high biodiversity, and it's for our own well-being. We depend on an intact nature. So I think that we need, in this context, we strongly need the live program. And the live program, I underline, I think it should be, as it has been so far, a standalone program that's quite defined for what purpose it is meant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, old friend. And now I give the floor to the responsible to the European incidence of WWF, Bit Icons.
Thank you very much. And for the opportunity, I think I'm going to chime in with all the speakers who have been talking to us about how the LIFE program works. And I think it will come as no surprise if I focus mostly on the biodiversity aspects and water, because we are a conservation organization, and I'd like to talk to you about what we as a network can share in terms of learnings with how we see the LIFE program has worked nationally, but also as a European level instrument. So yeah, we have heard it today multiple times, LIFE works, and yet in the MFF proposals, parts of LIFE would be absorbed in the competitiveness fund, while the other part would go under the national and regional partnership plans, notably under the EU facility. And let me be clear, we as WWF, we do not think that this would work. Because LIFE projects are usually not about competitiveness goals, and the EU facility, in fact, will have many competing priorities and is already underfunded. So our big concern here with this new structure is that LIFE would lose out and be literally lost in the crowd and deprioritized. Before going a bit deeper, I'd also like to recall, in my view, 3 key points when we talk about biodiversity funding, and which also matter when we discuss the future of the LIFE program. The first one is the EU budget is the backbone of biodiversity investment. If we look at how funding is going into the biodiversity, then we will see that more than half of all public investment in biodiversity across Europe come from the EU budget. So the decisions that are being made here in the next MFF are hugely consequential for biodiversity in Europe. Second point, so aside from its own value, biodiversity is a major economic asset. So healthy nature helps us manage water, prevent floods, moisture keeping in soils during the droughts, regulate temperatures, and also keep our soils fertile for farming. So these natural services save money and they protect communities and they support local businesses. And investments in biodiversity work. I'm sure you all have heard the number that every euro invested in biodiversity actually delivers a financial benefit of 8 euros. And the third, very last point is the timing is critical. So the next MFF will coincide also with the implementation of the EU Nature Restoration Law, where we also have a funding gap of biodiversity of annually almost 19 billion euros. And keeping this in mind, the EU needs a strong funding instrument. And in our view, LIFE is one of the most effective tools that we have for that. So we would not see a reason why you would discontinue this. And from the onset, also LIFE has always been closely interlinked with nature and biodiversity. MEP Luena has just mentioned the Natura 2000 network, which literally has been one of the biggest success stories. Even in remote areas across Europe, you will likely come across the LIFE logo when you're going for a walk in a nature reservation. And so in this regard, LIFE has become the quality label at European level, and a symbol that the EU is working together to protect our nature. So without this dedicated standalone instrument, we wouldn't have the same visibility, and crucially, we wouldn't have the continuity that nature projects need to strive on the ground. So we need the predictability and stability that only a standalone program can deliver. And if you visit, I mean, we have heard so much about LIFE projects on the ground today, but if you visit them, it's exactly about that the LIFE programs also help us to bring EU legislation for nature and climate to life on the ground and into action, into very tangible results. And this matters because member states and regional local authorities, they cannot do this all on their own. But we also need the stakeholders on the ground to be part of this. We need conservation organizations, we need SMEs, we need public authorities, regions, we all need them on board. And this is also what LIFE is ultimately about, having the collaboration at EU level and working together with all the expertise that we have as different stakeholders to come up with solutions that work, learn from each other, and then replicate them. And LIFE has been tremendously successful in just doing that. So this has truly been the EU added value that the program has delivering. And also not to forget the ownership that this brings to people. I mean, we have just heard it also from the energy communities across Europe, that people feel the EU is supporting them in protecting their nature and taking ownership in what matters to them. And this would also be gone if we would get rid of, or if we would not continue LIFE in the next MFF. And lastly, let me highlight also that having LIFE under direct management by the European Commission was, in our view, one of the essential success factors in ensuring also accessibility of beneficiaries from all EU member states. And the coordination towards joint European objectives. So if we wouldn't have had this EU coordinated instrument, then we would have not been coordinated in working jointly towards our biodiversity and nature goals. And biodiversity doesn't stop at borders. If you look at, for instance, the Danube River, we have some very good LIFE project examples where member state communities across member states, even in EU accession countries, have been working together to restore ecosystems around the Danube and to bring back species to the river. So I think this proves very clearly that we have a lot to win when we work together from a European perspective. And so as a conclusion, I'd like to say that even though LIFE only represents 0.3% of the EU budget, its impact has been much greater than that. So I think all the projects on the ground have been a testimony to that. LIFE has been a door opener. So many projects wouldn't have happened if it wouldn't have been for LIFE, because it literally was the leverage, the final kick to make these projects happen. And also discontinuing it would let down citizens, regions, and all who depend on this instrument to comply with environmental legislation. And so for the next MFF, as WWF, we think that just keeping the label LIFE without a dedicated budget is not enough. And we cannot put and should not put nature in competition with a lot of other priorities in funding instrument. And so from the experience with the Recovery and Resilience Facility, we saw that without earmarking, only 2% of the spending went into biodiversity objectives. So I think that makes it very clear that we need a dedicated instrument. So I think I'd like to close just by saying my call to policymakers in the Parliament, in member states, and to the European Commission today would be continue LIFE as a standalone program with an own budget line and as a truly European instrument. Thank you.
Thank you, Beat. the surprise of the evening, because we have with us Almodóvar, but not Pedro, is Pepe, almost, viceconsejero de Medio Ambiente.
He's the Vice Minister for Environment in Castilla-La Mancha. He's online. Over to you, Comrade. Thank you for being here today.
Gracias, César. I was speaking English, so I will speak in English if I may. Yeah, I'm not related to the famous director, but we were born in the same region in La Mancha. So I will speak about the LIFE program and the impact that this program is having in my region. Next slide, please. So I will start putting Castilla-La Mancha in a map. So here you have it. Castilla-La Mancha is a large region in the center of Spain. We have around 8 million of hectares, so we are slightly smaller than Austria. So it's a large region, but also we are having 2 million people living there, and we could say that 48% of our territory is Mediterranean forest. So nearly half of our territory is Mediterranean forest. So this is where we are, where Castilla-La Mancha is located. Please, next slide. I will share an example about how LIFE program could be important for us with the Iberian lynx. I think Mr. Menesini mentioned in the beginning, so we have a successful story to tell about the Iberian lynx recovery. And I could say that in 2002, there were 0 lynx in my region, none of them. It didn't exist. There were only 100 of lynx in the southern part of Spain, the very south, and in Portugal. So in the Iberian Peninsula, 100. And we started a LIFE project. We gathered different regional administration and also the national government. We gathered together with different NGOs and different companies. We started a LIFE project. And after several years, it was successful for us and really rewarding. So we decided to do it again. So we started a new one. And we started a second LIFE project. And we started a third one. And we were able to link it up to 4 different LIFE projects, and that were giving us very, very successful results. And we would like to have a 5th one. We would like to have a 5th opportunity, because this is a successful story, but it's an unfinished one. And let me give you some data so you could figure it out. Please, next slide. So talking about the Spanish lynx, so in 2002, there were only 100 lynx, 0 in Castilla-La Mancha. But right now, we are having more than 2,000 lynx in the Iberian Peninsula. And only in my region, we have 942 of them. So we can proudly say that right now, we are the region with the most Iberian lynx in the world. And this is thanks, of course, to this LIFE funding. And if you see the figures, you can see how the number of individuals has been exponentially growing year by year. And this could never have been done, haven't been done without the LIFE funding. It's not only about the money, the funding, it's also about the opportunity of working together with different administrations, with different levels, gathering together objectives, working with the same goal, everybody, and also this bottom-up approach where we are able to go from the ground to the highest ranking levels of the administration. So this is, as I say, it's a successful story, but it's unfinished. We would like to continue with this strategy about the recovery of the Iberian lynx. Next slide, please. So we like a lot this funding program. As my previous colleague said, the LIFE logo is everywhere. You can see it everywhere. We have participated in 26 different LIFE projects, my government, and this successful story is not only about Iberian lynx. We can tell the same about the Spanish imperial eagle, about the native crayfish, the marble teal, the Dupont's lark, etc. Also for forests, also for the La Mancha plain wetlands. So there are different stories, successful stories to tell. We are really proud about it, and we have, right now, we are coordinating a LIFE project. And I'm mentioning it because for at least from a Spanish perspective, for the Spanish administration, we normally don't coordinate. We participate, but it's complicated to coordinate due to the workload that is required, and it's a great challenge for a public administration to coordinate, because normally we are not flexible enough to adapt to these challenges. But we are coordinating the Wood for Life project that we are trying to connect the forest management, the forest fire prevention, that is a major issue for Mediterranean countries such as mine, and also with the climate change strategies. We are trying to link all this together, and we are also working with a region in Italy and with different forest companies and NGOs, and it is a very rewarding project, and it allows us to talk about forest management and forest fire prevention in Spain, in Italy, in Brussels. Next month we are going to the Netherlands. So it's a very successful story about the life. So next slide, please. I would like to finish with, well, we as Castilla-La Mancha government, we call for safeguarding the life's role as a cornerstone of financial support for environment and climate action. You know, life project is the flagship for environmental financing, and everybody knows, everybody could see the logo and identify it. So we like to keep it. It's a successful story. There are millions of successful stories around this project. And so we strongly urge that the life remains as an autonomous program. The life budgets must be strengthened, because it's important for us. For my department, it only means between 2 and 4% of our budget, what life is providing. But as I said before, it's not only about the money, it's also about the opportunity and trying to go beyond our barriers. So thanks a lot. That's all from my side.
Thank you. Gracias, viceconsejero.
Thank you very much, Jose.
For speakers, now we have time to maybe 1-2 questions, if you want. It's not mandatory. But if you want. If not, yes, dear colleague.
Thanks a lot. And first of all, I want to, Raphael Weiland from NABU, German BirdLife member. First of all, I want to thank all the panelists for showing this strong support for the LIFE program. It is really encouraging to see already the noise getting louder from the Parliament after this disappointing Commission proposal. My plea is only to, we were mostly now talking about the standalone fund, which is the way forward, I think, but we were not so much talking about the numbers yet. And I just want to, kindly ask you to also keep in mind that the numbers at the end matter, especially as in the MFF, we will lose other means for nature funding. The second pillar of the agricultural policy will decrease, the 10% expenditure target, the overarching one will not be there anymore. So once negotiating, please keep in mind that the number matter, and also the other, that within the CIP you need to improve, and then bring it to the interims report and the dossiers you are negotiating. Thanks a lot.
Some question more? No.
Yes, of course. It's also a question of financing. But I want to underline what has been said several times in this meeting, that with a relatively low amount of money, you can realize quite a lot on the ground. If you have the adequate, you just mentioned some examples, we see, let's be real, in the context of the MFF, the last 7 years, the amount that has been spent in life programs is quite modest, but the success is quite impressive. So, of course, the money should not be cut down, but with the amount foreseen nowadays for the next MMF, we should and we could do quite a lot of things. And as I said, the money coming from Life program could trigger also public money or private money that has you nowadays have quite a number of SMEs or even large companies that are eager to invest also in green projects. And if you say we have an officially funded, EU-funded program, Life program and project funded by this, you can find also other money to invest in this. But yes, of course, without money, life is dead.
Okay, and to finish this this debate, it's to the honor with the MEP Nicolás González Casares, Nico for Friends, and this is the closing remarks.
Thank you, Cesar, and thank you to all of you for having this interest debate and this interest event. And you know that Cesar Luena was the rapporteur of the nature restoration law, probably you know. So it was very important in defending biodiversity in Europe. Now I am the shadow rapporteur of this group, the Socialist and Democrat Group for the European Competitiveness Fund, and we are defending LIFE program. I was speaking with some young people coming from my region a few minutes ago about Erasmus. And almost all of them participated in the Erasmus program. You know, the Erasmus was born almost at the same time that the LIFE program. And it's clear that Erasmus is a brand for all Europeans. But when it comes to nature, at the same level as Erasmus, we have the LIFE program with less money, but giving us a lot of good results when it comes to the nature protection and the preservation of biodiversity. You have seen some data. If in Spain we have Iberian lynx or Cantabric bear, or in this moment a few capercaillie roes, you know, the big chicken roes, it's because LIFE program. And this happens in other parts of Europe. I'm referring to my member state, that's the part I know very well. So it's clear for us, for this group, and for me, and for my colleagues, that we have to defend the LIFE standalone program. Not only because we believe that we have to protect nature, to protect biodiversity, to restore natural ecosystems. We do this also because it's a clear European policy that we must defend from a European perspective. If we believe in the EU, you have to believe and you have to defend EU LIFE program. But not only the brand, also the content, and the content is made with money. So we need a LIFE standalone program with a clear, dedicated funding in the next MFF. All of you know this narrative present today in the European institutions about competitiveness. And I accept this debate, but with all the dimensions of competitiveness and our social model, our model of life cannot ignore nature. And we are competitive when we are aligned also with the things that nature provides to us. If we Europeans live more years than a North American citizen, 5, 6, 7, depending on the member state, it's not only because we are Europeans or we eat Mediterranean food in Spain, it's also because we protect nature, because we protect water. We don't want pollution in water, we don't want pollution in the things that we eat. And this is also competitiveness. Or which kind of competitiveness do we want for our children? Live 4, 5, 6 years less? No, we want them to live more. And this also is linked to the objectives of the LIFE program. And this narrative on competitiveness is also linked to other narrative used by the far right and the populist groups. That is the defense of agriculture or farming. How you can defend these sectors without protecting the environments around? It's almost impossible. So to be clear, defending life program in SMFF is not only make numbers in a budget, it's also to defend the European values. That's why we have to be strong together. And let me add one more remark, the final one. There is a clear imbalance in the public debate in Brussels. Companies have more power than civil society. And this imbalance we cannot allow to be continuous, and we have to have available tools in order to break this imbalance. And LIFE program is also one of them. This is also another thing that we have to defend. I don't want to stand more. I think I have been very clear. But let's remember one thing. Populist doesn't care about nature, doesn't care in reality about agriculture, farming, doesn't care in reality about competitiveness, even doesn't care about democracy. So that's why we had to defend LIFE program and these European values. Thank you very much.